Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. So in one of the last videos that I posted, I was talking about how it feels like manifestation is speeding up, as if it's almost immediate, right? And you're starting to see immediate synchronicities, whether it's from thoughts you had the night before or earlier this morning or 5 minutes ago, and that theme has continued to come up. And in a number of the private readings that I've done in the last couple of weeks, something else has come up that's made me think that I need to do a video about this. And the best way to explain it is like I need to show a diagram of what's going on in my head right now. So if you can see this track, right, imagine that this track is like the frame rate of reality. So think of it as almost being like a film reel, right? And for most of our history, we were back here where this little red dot is, right? So let's say that there were, 100 frames ahead of us, right? So you would think about something, it would bounce against the mirror of reality or the printer, whatever you want to call it, and it would print things out, and it would take a couple weeks or months or days or whatever to eventually reach us. Versus now, it feels like we are right here, as if we are on top of the printer itself, pressed right up against the mirror. And I keep calling it the mirror just because shadow work has gotten really, really intense in the last couple of weeks. I mean, raise your hands if you have been, things have come to the surface, if you've had your own kind of self reflective experiences that have been exponentially more intense than you expected them to be at this stage in the game, right? But it almost reminds me of if you've ever seen those celebrity red carpet photos where they're like super HD zoomed in versions and you can see every pore on their face and every hair, right? It's like that's almost what it feels like, right? Being right up against the mirror. But then, of course, there's also the immediate manifestation of it all, right? And one thing that this reminds me of is many moons ago, back in like 2017, there was this guy that had gone viral on YouTube who was named Og Tellez, Augtellez. And Og was one of those super soldier, secret space program survivor, whistleblower kind of people. And I remember there was one interview where he was talking about what he referred to as the Mayan time printer or the Mayan timeline printer. Either which way, I know he used the word Mayan to describe it because I guess it looked Mayan or something like that. And it seemed very similar to the Looking Glass, but different, almost like an ancient version of it. And effectively, he was saying that there was something about this technology where adults could not approach it because if they did approach it, there was something about getting close to the printer itself that was really wonky because it was almost like you could see all of the different probabilities, right? So it's like if you approached it and you had your own guilt or shame or fears or whatever it may be, right? It's like all of those things would be immediately projected and you would see all of those nightmares, right? So it's like anybody that was an adult that would try to approach it would have like a psychological break. So it was like only children could actually approach this thing and make it to the 0 point, right? And that's just reminded me of a theme that has come up in a lot of the readings in the last couple of weeks, where it feels like whoever it is that I'm reading looks like this. And I would say if you're watching this channel, for the small collective that we are, I would say that you are here. And what I call this is the timeline train station, right? So imagine that this circle with the red dot in it is like a train station that connects to all of these different timelines. But the train station itself is in 0 point, right? As if it's not really on a timeline, but you could pivot in any direction whatsoever. Now, why this reminds me of the Og Tellez story is because he was saying that when you would get close to the printer, it was like you could see all of the different timelines and potentialities, right? And I think that that is where we are, right? It's like there is no fixed future here. There is no guaranteed absolute outcome that's on the horizon, right? We are printing it in real time. But when you're up against the mirror, it's almost like you can see every single probability and where it leads, right? And of course, considering everything that's happening in the media right now, there's a lot of very scary probabilities on the horizon. And as a result of that, there is a lot of anxiety that's moving through the collective. And those of us that are already too empathic for our own good are feeling all of this anxiety and fear and the chaos and the tower moments, you name it, right? So it's like that is absolutely influencing the different things that we're seeing for ourselves personally, right? In addition to any of the good outcomes that could possibly happen as well, right? But the reason why I'm mentioning the scary stuff is because as we've always said, we, being the woo-woo community, the proverbial they cannot create anything without us, right? That we seem to be the generators, as if the printer really only responds to us, right? Why? I don't know, that could be its own video. Either which way, while I believe that we are right up against the printer, right up against the mirror in the timeline train station, I think that the proverbial they are still back here. Somehow, some way. We'll have to get into some quantum theory, right? But it's like, I don't think that they have caught up to us, so to speak. So of course, there's many different fear scenarios on the horizon right now. World War III, this, that, and the third, right? So I would be very cautious about hanging on to any of those narratives, right? Because it always makes me nervous when I hear people online say, and they're saying it as a whistleblower, as a word of warning, right? But it's always, they are going to do this, right? That's an affirmation, right? That they're going to institute World War III and martial law and the digital dollar and blah, 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 right? Versus the reality of the situation, which is that nothing is guaranteed, especially for them, right? The proverbial they who are so many frames behind us, right? But this also reminds me of that famous last interview that Terence McKenna did, where he talks about time wave zero, and which is like his name for the singularity, and basically says that as we approach the singularity, not only are things going to get exponentially strange to the point where nobody knows what's true anymore, but things are also going to speed up exponentially, which feels like what we've been experiencing with manifestation, right? And the pivots and all of that. So if I had to place a bet and wager a bet, I would absolutely say that we are in the event, right? Or at the very least, we have crossed the event horizon into that point of no return, the singularity, whatever it is that you want to call it, which would probably explain why we are here, right? In the 0 point timeline train station where you can just kind of pivot into any direction at any time, right? Which would imply that we can pull off just about anything right now, right? So whatever it is that you are trying to manifest for yourself, whatever it is that your dream is, your desire, regardless of how improbable it seems, right? Everything that we're experiencing today is improbable, right? Shout out to former Prince Andy who got arrested earlier this morning, right? That seemed improbable as of yesterday, right? So whatever it is that you're trying to create for yourself is not nearly as improbable as the things that we're seeing every single day, right? And the beauty of manifestation, right, is that it doesn't need to require logic or reason. Things can happen out of nowhere, right? All of a sudden, an opportunity shows up, things pivot, one thing leads to another, yada, yada, been there, done that, right? So, but the fear, at least the issue with being right up against the mirror, is that I think the mirror is the same thing that the occultist John Dee used to refer to as the Quran zone, right? So within John Dee's system of Enochian magic, there was this entity that he referred to as Quran zone, which I would basically refer to as like the firewall of the matrix itself, right? And that's what I think this is. I think that this is, well, I guess the firewall implies some sort of containment, right? But I guess if I'm looking at it from the perspective of the 0 point train station, right? It's like the circle that is the train station itself is the Quran's firewall, right? And the issue with the Quran's is that it shows up as your worst fears typically, right? It's like effectively designed to push you back or something like that, or at least that's the negative take on it, right? That it wants to keep you chained and all of that. But the other aspect of it, like I've been saying with the intensity of the shadow work recently, is that it's like you can't really move forward into certain things until older programs are resolved, right? Because it's like everything that's been showing up for myself is something that needs to be resolved, right? It's something that needs to be examined, right? But typically, it's like within my own story, it seems like those things are a lot easier to see when you're in some sort of fight or flight scenario, right? It's like if awareness is the universal solvent, then it's a lot easier to be aware of things if you're dealing with it, right? If it's right up there in your face. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of us. But that doesn't imply that we've effed up or that we're losing our mojo or that things are falling apart, right? It's like, as my friend Lisa would say, Lisa M. Harrison, shout out to Lisa if you're watching, it's like these programs have to wave on the way out, right? That it's like as we clear them, as they get dissolved, because awareness is the universal solvent, it's like that implies that we're seeing it, right? It doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just go away one day and we forget about it. It's like the program shows up, we examine it, the next thing you know, we're led back to the memory that was the genesis point. All of a sudden, we're changing the context of that experience, and next thing you know, the program can actually clear and be resolved and all of that. And that's what I think is happening right now, is that the dust is being kicked up effectively because it needs to be cleared out, right? So if you do have things that are coming up, it does not mean that you've screwed up, right? It does not mean that you're suddenly losing your mojo and headed towards this nightmare scenario where it's like, there we go, I was waiting for the next shoe to drop and now all the shoes are going to drop and everything's going to fall apart, right? No, it's like the gloom and doom energy is moving through the collective in general, right? It's like our atmosphere right now is made of gloom and doom and everybody is waiting for the apocalypse. We just don't know which one it's going to be, right? So what I would say is, up against the mirror, there is no guaranteed apocalypse, right? They have plenty of scripts that they're trying to run, right? Of we have to destroy this place, that place, whatever it needs to be. But none of it is guaranteed, right? Again, it's like the proverbial they need us to create it. And so far, it seems like there is no future. I don't know how else to say it. It's like, I know that sounds kind of gloom and doomy, but it's almost like I feel like we're reading a book where the next page has not been written yet. Where sometimes you get to the page and the page is writing itself as you're reading it, right? It's like that's how it feels, as opposed to, for the majority of our experience in here, there might have been a couple chapters ahead, right? And I'm just looking at my own history with tarot and doing readings for people where it's like, if I look at like the last 5 years, I feel like there were more long-term predictions a couple of years ago, whereas everything that I'm reading right now is talking about right now, and it's basically saying everything in the future is a blank space. It's like, what do you want to create? Seems to be the theme of the readings right now, which is a good thing, right? Because that would imply that we can kind of move in any direction. The question is just, what do we want to create, right? And again, it's like these programs are in the process of resolving so that we do move on to the timeline that we want to move on to. Because let's say out of all of these possibilities, it's like I'll make a green line, right? It's like this green line is the one that we actually want to go on. But all of these other possibilities that we can see, it's like it's based on old data. I think that's the best way to say it, is that it's like these probabilities, these scenarios are based on old data. And within the context of Project Looking Glass, right? Project Looking Glass was supposed to be, that AI that could predict the future or whatever it was. But when it came to the event, nobody knew what the event was, where it was going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. My hot take on that, I don't know if I've said this in any of my videos, but my hot take on that is that the reason why the looking glass could not render the event or articulate the event is because something about it transcends language, right? Where it's like our ability to imagine scenarios is limited by what we know, right? Because it's like you can't imagine a color you've never seen, you can't imagine a flavor you've never tasted, and it's very difficult to imagine a scenario that you have no point of reference for, right? Like how I've said many times, imagine trying to write a story without an adversary, right? It's like every story has some sort of adversarial theme that drives the plot, whether it's a person, place, or thing, right? Where it's like hunger could theoretically be the quote unquote adversarial force that drives the theme, right? Whatever it may be. And it's difficult for us to imagine, again, this green line scenario, this timeline that doesn't have adversaries, that isn't based on these limited things that we've experienced in the past, right? And that something new is coming. So that's where I say, again, that it's like it doesn't need to make sense to you right now, whatever it is that happens, just because it seems like whatever it is that's happening next is so new that we don't have the language for it, right? I think I did mention this in my last video because I was talking about like all of the, what do they call the young kids these days? Are the Gen Alpha? Would that be like a teenager now, and how they have all this wacky language that like does not make sense to any of us, right? It's like, how would the Looking Glass 20 years ago have predicted a live streamer like Collicular who's talking about looks maxing and mogging and all of these words that like I don't even know what the heck it means, right? But that's it. It's like language is constantly reinventing itself, and whatever it is that's coming, we don't have the language for yet. That's the best way to describe it. And it's almost like the, how would you say it? It's like there's something about that that is a loophole that can allow us to manifest things because we don't need to know how it happens, right? It's like that's where we can kind of quote unquote leave it up to spirit, so to speak, in terms of filling in the blanks. And that also goes back to what I was saying a couple videos ago about writing what I call the quantum field report, where if you are trying to manifest something specific, you just write a little journal that says, everything worked out better than I could have imagined, and it happened quickly with ease and grace, and it was completely cohesive and harmonious with my life. And, you know, basically implying that there were no tower moments, right? That we did not need to experience a tower moment as the price of receiving this manifestation, right? And is there anything else that wants to come through? I'm so sorry. I'm moving at like a mile a minute. I know I'm on my 49th coffee of the day. But is there anything else I want to say? I want to keep this short. I think that's pretty much it. I definitely think that we're in the event, the singularity, whatever it is that you want to call it. That implies that we literally can manifest anything. It doesn't need to make sense. Stop worrying about their fear scenarios. I'm speaking to myself when I say that as well, right? Because it's difficult to unplug from those things. But if you could have your cake and eat it too, really is the law. If you could have your cake and eat it too, what would you have, right? Not making it gluten-free because somebody else likes gluten-free. What would you have, right? Not doing strawberry because somebody else likes strawberry. If you like chocolate, make your chocolate cake, right? In terms of your manifestation, that you can be hyper specific, because that I think is going to be the ultimate green line, right? If you were going to do something just for the sake of doing it, right? If it didn't require, like if money was not a thing, right? What would we be doing? And then, of course, commercialize it, right? Capitalize it, whatever. Anything could be turned into money. But theoretically, it's like if we didn't have to worry about any of these other fight or flight survival programs, what would we do? Okay, I feel like I'm getting redundant, so I'm just going to leave that there. If anyone's interested in their own private reading, hit me up, because I do have some availability this weekend. But I don't know. I guess for everybody, this really is the private reading, right? It's like we are on the mirror. We are on the printer. We are there. There is no guaranteed scary scenario that's happening to anybody, but it's almost like there's no guaranteed scenario in general, right? It's like we're kind of making this up as we go. And I think that's it. I think that's what I'll leave it on. It's like there's a part of me that almost feels like spirit itself doesn't exactly know what happens next, but that it's working with us to create things. And another theme that's been coming up in the readings actually is beta testing. Is that it's almost like, because we can see all of these different probabilities from the timeline train station, it's almost like it gives us the ability to play Goldilocks and kind of beta test these different scenarios, right? And be like, how does this look? How does this feel? And sometimes you don't even have to actively experience it, right? Sometimes you can just imagine it and kind of intuitively know what happens if I go left, what happens if I go right, right? It's like knowing whether or not something is going to be cohesive and viable before you even entertain it, right? It's like as soon as the thought crosses your mind, you know whether or not it feels good or bad, right? It's like the Goldilocks thing. So, okay, so I'll leave it there. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon.